Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our journey today with a fascinating look at a journey from clay to code. The title itself hints at the incredible evolution of communication and technology. In this presentation, we'll explore the origins of writing, how it transformed human interaction, and ultimately led us to the digital world we live in today. So, let's dive in and discover how our methods of recording and sharing information have developed over time. Let's take a closer look at the people who worked at the Lagash temple. There were many different roles, including around 300 slaves, as well as 205 cloth workers. In addition, sailors, bakers, cooks, guards, fishermen, herders, and scribes all played vital parts in maintaining the temple's operations. This diverse workforce highlights how complex and organized early civilizations like Sumer had become. As societies grew larger and more intricate, relying solely on memory to manage information became impossible. They needed a new system to keep track of everything. This is where writing comes into play. It's fascinating to remember that writing is actually a relatively recent invention, only about 5,000 years old. Yet, this small innovation fundamentally transformed human civilization, enabling us to record, share, and build upon knowledge like never before. So, when we think about the dawn of complexity around 5,000 years ago, it's clear that the development of writing was a crucial turning point. It allowed societies to organize larger populations, manage resources more efficiently, and create the rich civilizations we study today. Imagine trying to keep track of 10,000 sheep without writing anything down. How would you do it? Well, one clever method was to use small discs, each representing a certain number of items, like 10 bags of grain. Sometimes, people would make holes in these tokens so they could string them together, like a necklace, making it easier to count and carry records. Now, the key point here is that writing didn't happen all at once. It evolved gradually over time. The earliest solution was quite ingenious. People used small clay tokens in different shapes to represent the types and quantities of goods they were dealing with. These clay tokens were essentially the first form of accounting. They are often called the first accountants because they served as a tangible way to keep track of trade and inventory before the invention of writing. So, these clay tokens laid the foundation for more complex methods of record-keeping, showing how humans creatively developed solutions to manage their growing economic activities. Writing was born from a need to improve communication in ancient trade. Initially, people used envelopes and tokens to secure and identify goods. But over time, it became clear that the actual impression or mark was more important than the container or the token itself. This realization marked a key turning point in the development of writing. Then came a breakthrough. Merchants started making impressions of tokens directly onto wet clay, creating a more durable and direct record. This allowed for more reliable and tamper-proof documentation. Before this, a major problem was that drivers or traders couldn't remember what was inside a sealed envelope without opening it, which risked theft or spoilage. To solve this, they began placing tokens inside sealed clay balls or envelopes, measures to prevent tampering and ensure the contents stayed secure. All of this happened around 3500 BCE, a time when long-distance trade was expanding rapidly. However, with increased trade came new challenges. Caravan drivers sometimes stole goods, which threatened the stability of these exchanges. This progression from simple tokens to inscribed tablets marked the birth of writing, a revolutionary step that laid the foundation for record-keeping and communication as we know it today. Now let's look at stage 1, pictographs, which dates back to around 3500 to 3000 BCE at this stage. Early humans used simple pictures to represent objects and ideas. For example, a drawing of water or a river would directly symbolize water. Similarly, an ox could stand for the animal, and a man or person would represent a human figure. When they wanted to denote the sun or a day, they used a picture of the sun. These pictographs were excellent for commerce because they made tracking goods and inventory straightforward. However, their main limitation was that they could only express concrete objects, things that could be seen and easily depicted with a picture. They lacked the capacity to convey more complex ideas or emotions. One of the key strengths of pictographs was their simplicity. They provided a clear and direct way to record information. If you saw a picture of the sun, you immediately understood it meant the sun. This straightforward visual language made record-keeping much easier for early societies. In summary, during this stage, one pictograph or symbol simply meant exactly what it looked like. This simplicity formed the foundation for more advanced writing systems later on. Now, let's look at how the concept of abstract meaning developed in early writing. For example, the symbol for walk was represented by a simple drawing of a leg, and the symbol for day was shown as a sun. These symbols initially had very literal meanings: legs for walking, the sun for daytime. But over time, their usage expanded beyond just the physical objects or actions. A sun could now also mean day, and legs could represent the action to walk. This is a key point because it shows how writing started to represent more abstract ideas, not just concrete objects. The symbols evolved to convey concepts that went beyond their literal images, allowing for more nuanced communication. This period, around 3000 to 2100 BCE, marks what we call Stage 2, ideographs. It's a significant step in the evolution of writing because it laid the foundation for expressing complex ideas symbolically. So, in essence, early writing began to move from simple pictures to symbols that could stand for broader, more abstract concepts, an important development in human communication. Now, let's look at how ancient systems like Mesopotamian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphics used rebus writing, which involved around 700 symbols each. Rebus writing is quite fascinating because it relies on representing sounds rather than just images. For example, take the name Nielsen. It can be broken down into Neil plus sun, which sounds like Nielsen. We symbolize sun with sun and kneel with a kneeling man emoji man. When you combine these, it's a visual way of representing the name through sounds. This method made it easier for people to relate to words through their ears, not just their eyes. Instead of focusing solely on what a symbol visually looks like, writers could use the phonetic sounds of words. This opened up a whole new world, literally, where names, abstract ideas, and even complex concepts could be written and understood. Why did this matter? Well, it was a major turning point in the history of writing. It shifted the focus from pictorial representation, what the symbol looked like, to the sounds of words. This phonetic approach allowed for more flexibility and expression in writing. And that brings us to the breakthrough, the sound revolution. Rebus writing marked a significant step forward. It laid the groundwork for more advanced phonetic scripts and, ultimately, the development of alphabetic systems we use today. This is why rebus writing is such a crucial stage in the evolution of written language, connecting the sounds we make with the symbols we see. So, what's really remarkable here is that this system reduced the need to memorize around 700 symbols down to just 26 letters. This was a huge leap because it made literacy much more accessible, essentially democratizing the ability to read and write forever. Later on, this alphabet was perfected by adding vowels, which helped clarify pronunciation and meaning. It's also fascinating to see how different cultures influenced each other. The Greeks, for example, had an earlier alphabet that actually influenced the Phoenicians. Before that, the Egyptians developed their own writing system, which introduced the concept of phonetics, giving us the idea of representing sounds rather than just ideas or objects. The Phoenicians took this even further by creating a system with one symbol for each individual sound, like B, D, or K. And the real breakthrough came with the phonetic alphabet, which was based on the insight that we only produce about 25 different sounds. This simplification, one symbol for each sound, was revolutionary because it made writing much more efficient and easier to learn. So this stage, Stage 4, the phonetic alphabet, really marks the foundation of the writing systems we use today. Society was heavily dependent on scribes, which made them both essential and somewhat vulnerable. Because their work involved recording important information, there was always the risk that they might take bribes or tamper with records. In fact, letters often started with pleas or threats, asking scribes to read their messages accurately, highlighting just how crucial their trustworthiness was. Fully qualified scribes worked for powerful clients like the king, temples, or wealthy merchants, and pursuing this career could lead to a very promising future. Training to become a scribe was intense. It began at a very young age, around 6, and lasted for about 12 years. Students would study from sunrise to sunset, dedicating themselves to mastering this complex skill. Scribes held a very high status in society because their skills were so specialized and vital. Their ability to read, write, and record information accurately was essential for running the government, temples, and commerce. Before the development of a simple alphabet, only a small, specialized group could learn the complex system of around 700 symbols. This made scribes quite exclusive and highly respected, as their knowledge was rare and valuable. So, in a way, scribes were the gatekeepers of knowledge, protecting, recording, and transmitting the key information that kept society functioning. They truly played a crucial role in shaping and maintaining the civilization's communication and record-keeping systems. Let's take a look at the history behind the development of writing, starting with the emergence of poetry and literature, which really helped shape our cultural identity. As more people became literate and gained the freedom to explore writing for cultural purposes, it laid a crucial foundation for civilization's broader cultural achievements. The expansion of the alphabet was a game-changer. It allowed writing to go beyond just government and business needs and opened up avenues for literature, poetry, and history. Before the alphabet, scribes mostly focused on managing government records and commercial transactions. With the alphabet, suddenly more people could learn to read, which meant society started relying less on scribes. As a result, the status of scribes declined because their specialized skills became less essential. Most importantly, the alphabet unlocked human creativity. It enabled ideas and cultural expressions to spread far beyond the confines of governance and commerce, fueling the growth of shared knowledge and cultural development across societies. Tracing its family tree back to those first clay tokens, the concept of recording information has deep roots in human history. The computer, for example, built upon this foundation of writing to spread knowledge rapidly across societies. The invention of the printing press then became a crucial milestone, serving as a foundation for future revolutions in communication and learning. This ability to maintain detailed records allowed city-states to expand into vast empires because writing became the backbone of administration, commerce, and governance. Think about it. Without writing, kings and merchants could only manage what was immediately around them. But with it, they could track taxes, monitor market research, and manage trade routes across great distances. Writing's legacy is really about building empires. It gave societies the tools to organize, control, and expand their influence far beyond their original boundaries. So, in the bigger picture, writing isn't just about recording information. It's about shaping civilizations and enabling the growth of complex, interconnected societies. So, what could be the next revolution in communication? Well, every text message we send, every email we write, and even the lines of code that power our technology all have a common origin. They can all be traced back to something very fundamental, a lump of clay. The computer revolution we're experiencing today is as significant as the invention of writing itself, which happened around 5,000 years ago. But interestingly, it all begins with those first simple clay tokens used in ancient times. From those humble clay tokens, humans moved toward more complex systems of recording and communication. And now, in the digital age, we're transforming those early concepts into lines of digital code. This progression, from clay tokens to digital code, highlights how foundational ideas about communication evolve over millennia. And it reminds us that the future of communication will likely build on these very roots, pushing us into new, revolutionary ways to connect. ways that we can only begin to imagine today.